Could fungi be used as building materials for future habitats on the Moon and Mars? Could bacteria be used to detoxify water on Mars? These are some of the futuristic concepts being explored by Dr. Lynn Rothschild and her team at NASA. I asked about these concepts to Dr. Rothschild, who was recently in Paris to attend the Hello Tomorrow Global Summit as a speaker. Let's listen in.
So we've had a lot of proof of concept projects that have been funded by the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts program that looks for things that are 10, 20, 30 years out. So these are projects that are not ready right now for the surface, but at least they're there so that we can start to think about them for the future. So one of these projects is using fungi for building materials. You think, wait a minute, that sounds like taking mushrooms and making houses out of it. Well, in a way it is, but it's not the mushrooms themselves. It's the underground portion of a mushroom that can be used to bind other materials, just like it does in nature. It binds the soil, they bind wood chips and so on. So what if you use that approach for taking these fungal mycelia and binding materials to make houses or rover shells or maybe even chairs and beds and plates and forks out of these materials. So this is something that we've been very focused on the last few years. We have a problem on Mars that is not too common on planet Earth, but does occur, that we have a lot of perchlorates in the surface material on Mars. And so to be able to drink the water that's present on the surface of Mars, we're going to have to detoxify it. Now, we know that there's some bacteria that can do that on planet Earth, but these are not the right bacteria to take to space. They're not ones that I can really count on to do the job. And so we have a project where we take these capabilities that have evolved in one set of bacteria, put them in another set of bacteria that will be able to at least be used on the surface of Mars with some protection and so on. And as setting up this system so that the water is harvested, we have a system where we can take these bacteria that we've made, take out the perchlorates, and then be able to use that water for humans to drink or plants to use to grow or whatever. If you get sick, you can go down to the drugstore and just buy some new pharmaceuticals. But there is no local drugstore when you're in space. And worse, a lot of the drugs that we count on go bad without refrigeration. And even with refrigeration, a lot of the very new drugs don't last more than 6 months. And if you figure it takes 6 months to get to Mars, and then you're going to have to be there about another year and a half before the planets realign, and then 6 months back, you're talking about 2.5 years, 3 years that you have to have drugs stable at room temperature. And you have to know what you're going to need. And so that becomes pretty much impossible. And so we proposed a system where you can make the drugs on demand within 24 hours. So what's interesting is this is totally different than what pharmaceutical industries focus on, because they're, of course, in the business of making money, and they're looking to maximize the number of people that they can treat. We're focused on maybe 1 to 6 astronauts, but when they need the drug, they need it right now, and we have to be able to produce it with high fidelity. So this will lead the way to not only allowing the astronauts to stay safe and healthy, but to then have applications on the Earth, for example, emergency medicine or submarine, or people who live in remote areas that don't have access to a drugstore that has fresh pharmaceuticals. So I firmly believe that this is going to have huge implications for the way we deal with pharmaceuticals on planet Earth as well. So the way we are going to achieve the astropharmacy is by programming certain bacteria to be able to produce the pharmaceuticals. And these are pharmaceuticals at this point that are based on proteins, so what are called peptide-based biologics. And so we program the bacteria in the earth, and then we dry the bacteria. So now they weigh virtually nothing. You can dry millions of them on a little tiny piece of paper. And then we can take this library of bacteria with us. And then when we need the drugs, we add a little liquid, we add a little culture medium, just a tiny amount. We let the bacteria grow, they produce the drugs, and then we go through 1 or 2 or 3 steps of a purification system, and at that point we hope it's going to be pure enough that we're going to be able to use it for the astronauts.